And only murders in the building. It's a unique thing, but that's the whole premise of the show, that you're only going to be involved
Well,
in.
Steve's original joke is because we were old, he would solve a murder, but it had to happen in the building. He didn't travel.
So it's in that way, it's like Murder, She Wrote, that in this town she lives in, there's constantly a murder.
Absolutely, yeah. Well,
So-
we're in New York, so there's constantly.
Oh, yeah, right.
So, I know this seems impossible. It's bananas, but I think there's a very strong chance that the person who poisoned Winnie was, and this gives me no pleasure in saying this, musical superstar Sting.
The guy from U2.
Are you kidding me?
Sting.
The Police, Roxanne?
Every Breath You Take, only one of the biggest love songs of all time. Who educated you?
Oh, now I know. He did Sledgehammer.
Oh, it's
Peter Gabriel.
Guys, I know who Sting is. And by the way, Every Breath You Take is no love song. It's about a jealous stalker and surveillance, and it actually seems like it was written by a killer.
Oliver, look, I know you would love to have a celebrity killer, but Sting did not murder Tim Kono.
Welcome to the actor's side. Well, let me read off a few names here. Ed Grimley, Jiminy Glick, Jackie Rogers Jr., Neil Sussman, one of my favorites, by the way, Frank, on and on. All those names, all those people live inside Martin Short. Welcome to the actor's
They
side.
dwell rent-free.
Man, the list of characters is
Irving Cohen.
top of the list. I should have read him right
yes.
there. Irving Cohen. I mean, you've done them all. Who's your favorite? You get asked that all the time. Is there one?
I don't think you have. I think they, in a sick way, they become like your children. So you kind of love them all for their own individual reasons, you know. I loved Ed Grimley's optimism. I love that Jiminy Glick is all improvised, so you don't know what you're saying next, you know.
Jiminy Glick is genius. It really is. I am proud to say I was there at the birth of Jiminy Glick.
You were. You were working on the Martin Short talk show for King World,
Yes.
1999, 2000, and we invented Jiminy that year.
I remember
because we wanted to have someone be like a roving correspondent and go to junkets and things.
So we booked a bunch of junkets, and
We did.
And you had Tom Hanks and different people, and you just sprung that character. But what was so great, it was so improvised. There's all this stuff coming out of your mouth that I don't know where it's coming from.
Oh, I remember I would say, I would look back at, you know, because we shoot for, let's say, 18 minutes to edit down to 8. And I would see me saying, I take great umbrage. And I thought, I've never used that expression. I don't even know what it means, you know.
So funny. Did you ever do one, and then you obviously went on to do Primetime Glick. You did a feature film with Jiminy Glick.
That's
It
right.
became its own little cottage industry. But did you ever run upon somebody out there that didn't know it was kind of a put on, that thought it was real?
No, they all knew because I would talk to them in advance.
Yeah,
You know, I remember Alec Baldwin, we did, we do 2 passes.
right.
We do interviews without an audience, some with an audience. This is without an audience. And I said so Alec and I did it for about 8 minutes. And then we took a break. I said, okay, now what else? What else? He said, ask me about women. I said, okay. So I kept asking him, and his premise now was that every woman wanted to have sex with him, including Hillary, including, Dianne Feinstein, So he was hilarious. So he helped shape that as well.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's so good. So many of them. Ed Grimley's still, to date, the only one character to come out of SCTV, out of SNL, that got his own show. I mean, his own.
That's his own cartoon
animated
show. That's right.
Isn't that pretty amazing?
The completely mental misadventures of Ed Grimley.
Which was so fun. I wish it went
Yeah,
on
it was. Well, it was a very early, it was pre-Simpsons. So this kind of adult, level of playing to the adults for a show that was in 8 in the morning.
Yeah.
So it really was playing for the guys that were just getting in.
That is true.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to Saturday morning cartoons?
I
and
don't
things?
know.
I mean, the whole world has changed and all of that.
Yes,
but,
it has.
It's so interesting, the different ways you've gone about in this business and the different roles you've taken on, and the dramatic roles too. I love Dick Lundy in Morning Show,
Right.
and also when you did Damages and
Right.
different things. Yeah. So as an actor, do you look at yourself as an actor, a comedian, entertainer? I mean, you're all these things.
I would say probably an entertainer. You know,
Yeah.
that's probably the main thing. But certainly, I wouldn't say I'm a stand-up. So
Right.
I'm a comic actor, and so you're also an actor.
Yeah.
I find it at times, in certain situations, if you believe the situation, and it's good writing, that's easier than trying to make a situation funny,
Yeah.
especially if it's not inherently funny.
Why are people known for comedy some of the best dramatic actors around, though?
Well, I think that if you do the comic acting well, you're playing a character that exists out there, but you're not trying to make anyone laugh. Once they sense that you're trying to make us laugh, then we kind of don't laugh.
Yeah. When people stop you, what do they talk about? I mean, there are rabid fans of Inner Space, to this day, I'll bet, and Three Amigos, obviously, and a lot of the films.
I think it's often it's a film that they feel they've discovered. So if it's if it's a guy 28 and he's still in university, it's Clifford.
Yeah.
And if it's a guy who's 45, it's Three Amigos.
Ah.
And if it's a woman who's 45, it's Father of the Bride 1 or 2.
Ah, there you go.
But it's true. I went to my dermatologist today for a checkup, and his obsession, this is about a 35-year-old guy, obsession was Inner Space.
See?
So
There
it really does vary from person to person.
Do you ever know that when you're making these, that it's going to have a life beyond?
No. You don't know anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the only thing that an actor can control is he having a good time making it?
Right.
Because a lot of people feel that they have to create World War III and out of the ashes will come their performance. Well, that's just assuming the movie's going to be any good. And often a success is just a fluke, the right timing, and so what I can control is my experience doing it.
Yeah.
And so my gimmick is to make everyone love me and to hop around and make everyone laugh. And then when I go up to the director and say, "Oh, can I have a freedom take, please?" "Oh, should we let Marty have a freedom take? All right." And then I try something else. I'll maybe improvise something. Then I can go home and toast myself and say, that moron's going to screw it up, but I gave him everything he needed.
Yeah, and you can look at your Emmys and your Tonys and,
Yes.
and I did it,
No, but I think that you have to celebrate what you were able to accomplish, not the finished product.
It's so amazing. Bowen Yang was sitting here the other day, and he brought up your name, and because I said, so you had that big success right on SNL doing the Titanic, playing the Titanic thing, and I said, and so that was a something. What was that like? And he said, it's great, but Martin Short actually gave me some advice, and he says, okay, you do that, you have a big success, and then you got to start all over.
All over again, yeah.
Is that your mantra there?
Well, it was just a fact. It was final exams every week, And I had a very unusual experience there, as did Billy Crystal, as did Christopher Guest, in that we all had a one-year contract.
Yeah.
So had I been, and I was now already established, I'd been on SCTV, I was 34, I wasn't 24. So I think if I started at 24, knowing I was going to stay there as long as they'd let me stay there, it would have been a more chill experience. But I was treating it like I only have 20 shows. Every week is a special, a Marty special. So I used to, put a lot of, and I was a writer, and people, my stuff was so odd that I think a lot of people said, I like him. I don't know how to write for him,
So you had your own little corner of that.
I would write with, I would write with certain writers, Andy Breckman, Jim Downey, Chris, Harry, Billy.
Yeah.
We would write together.
And SCTV, I mean, that's a classic to this day. All of you.
Absolutely, that was a brilliant show. And
was
I can brag about it particularly because I was the interloper. I came in late.
You did, didn't you?
Yeah.
You weren't there at the very beginning.
No.
Yeah, and so I mean, why was that magic, to have that group, that it just clicked.
I think, it was just a brilliant group.
Yeah.
And they were in charge of the show. So you now have brilliants who are the bosses.
Yeah.
And everyone worked with each other. But also it was a great idea. You would write for 6 weeks and you would shoot for 6 weeks.
Right.
I remember when we were on Cinemax, Eugene, who was one of the dominant writers, Eugene Levy, didn't have any ideas for a couple of weeks. He just didn't. Now in SNL, he would have been finished because the show would have come and gone.
Right.
But he could make up for it because he was a little fallow for a couple of weeks, and then he went through the roof for the last 4, and now he still wrote more than anyone.
It's amazing. And now I've read all those characters. Now there's Oliver Putnam, which he's great. It's a great character. You and Steve working together, everybody knows you. You're like a comedy team now.
Yeah.
You've turned
We're like Trump and the My Pillow guy without the sexual tension.
You just work off each other. What is it about the name Martin that has to be in the greatest comedy teams in show business? Martin and Lewis, Rowan and Martin and Martin now.
It is interesting. I know, how odd. Yeah.
But the two of you go out, you perform, you do your show, you've done everything together. You've done movies together, obviously, Father of the Bride. So this series was unexpected for me, to see Steve Martin go into a series like this. He's never done one before.
He's never done a TV show, no.
Yeah. So how did you talk him into it?
I didn't talk him into it. He was at a party about 10, 12 years ago. And Sandy Gallen, the great manager, it was his party. And there were 3 men in their 70s sitting on the couch, actors.
Right.
And Sandy said, you should write a series for those guys. And Steve thought, well, that's an interesting idea. And Steve's always been obsessed with true crime. He watches all those shows.
Oh, yeah.
So he thought, yeah, maybe like a murder mystery in a great hotel. And then he just didn't think about it again. And a couple of years ago, he had one of those business brunches with Dan Fogelman, who had just finishing This Is Us, and a great writer, producer. And at the end, he said, Steve, do you have any ideas? And Steve said, well, I do have this one idea. And within a year, we were in production,
That just like that.
It moved very quickly, yes.
Yeah.
And they said, Steve, would you want to be in it? And he said, well, I'd do it maybe if Marty did it.
Ah.
And so I heard the group, and I said, sure, I'll do it in a second.
And you did it.
And I did it.
Yeah, and you added a third wheel, which I think
Selena
is
Gomez.
so key for the two of you
Absolutely.
to be able to play off Selena Gomez,
Right.
who's kind of the straight person here, but different.
Absolutely. And I remember, and she's such a great actress, and because she pretended to know who we were. So, I said, Selena, what did you do when you found out you were working with me? And she said, I Googled you.
That's what makes it. But I don't know. There's just certain chemistry. It's very hard to figure out who's going to have the chemistry. But this show worked right from the beginning.
It really did. I mean, and I think the big delight was the chemistry with Selena and Steve. Steve and I knew that we had chemistry.
Yeah.
But you don't know. I remember driving to work on the first day because we'd only Zoomed with Selena.
This was all during the pandemic.
Yeah. And I remember thinking, gee, I wonder what she's going to be like. She could be a nightmare. She could be difficult. Who's to say?
Yeah.
And right away you knew she was just so delightful and so, like Steve and me, it was all about having joy on the set.
Yeah.
And making the crew laugh.
Yeah. And the New York is a real character here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right from the font of the New Yorker.
And
that is
everything
permeates, yeah.
in this. It's so great to see New York portrayed in this way, I think. Too.
Right, in a kind of theatrical way.
Yeah, and your character, Oliver. So it's so fun to develop. How many shows has he done? What does he want to bring back?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and every time there's, this production design creates a new poster in his apartment. Newark. That was a show we worked on,
That's a good one, yeah, and all that. So in your head, when you're creating this character and doing this, what kind of backstory do you do? How much do you go into it?
I'm not that good. So what I do is I really go from the word.
Yeah.
I look at the script, and then you meet with the writer and say, well, he said this here. Now he's saying that there. It's hard for me to see that that's the same guy. Oh, okay, well, we'll change that line. And then after a few episodes, you become familiar with the character. So you can say to the writer now, you know what, Oliver wouldn't say that. Or if he did say that, that's who he is. Do you want him to be that person?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, then he wouldn't say that. And so that's, it's that marriage between the writer and the actor of doing a character and keeping him sincere within the confines of his definition.
That's definitely a smart tip for actors out there of doing it and not being considered difficult.
Yeah, right. Well, if you make any, see, you got to make them love you.
Yeah, right? Because you don't want to be on a miserable set.
No.
You're doing a second season of this now, right?
We just finished the second season.
So when are we going to see that?
That premieres June 28th.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. Because you've already been nominated for Golden Globes, for Critics' Choice Awards, for SAG Awards for this
Yes.
performance. And
Peabody.
The Peabody?
Yes.
I know. It's like, it's really caught on.
Yeah.
Do you like that whole world of streaming and,
Well, what's amazing about streaming is that even if you're in a massive hit movie, after a month or so, it starts to wane at the theater. This lives and lives and lives within the world of Hulu. So people who still haven't seen it, if it had been a feature film that had been out last spring or last summer, people would have said, oh, I missed that. Now they don't have to miss it.
They don't, and they can go on. And
Right.
So word of mouth happens in a kind of different way now.
Well,
among
it's
people.
been very successful, I must
Yeah.
admit, delightfully, so I can say. And so a lot of people have seen it. But there's still some people saying, I'm dying to see it, and I'm going to see it. But I'm waiting to, some people would wait because they're conditioned to binge. They wanted all 10 episodes.
Right.
Because last year we released 3 episodes, and it was once a week.
I think that's the way
And
to
this
do
year
it.
it's going to be 2 and once a week.
And once a week, because that creates the whole thing. People can talk about it as it goes. And wait,
Absolutely. It's like
that's-
Wordle.
Yeah.
Wordle once a day. That's its gimmick.
exactly. Well, that's the way television used to be.
Absolutely.
We couldn't.
Well, people are, get more impatient.
Which is a shame, I
Yeah,
think.
well, it's spoiled.
I think it's going to change back.
Everything
because-
changes back.
Yeah.
The pendulum goes this
Yeah.
and that.
Said you, the veteran of show business. you know.
Yes.
You are now at the top of a pinnacle of a career that's amazing. And this book, if you haven't read this book yet, it is so, first of all, it's really well written.
Thank
And you have total recall.
I do have total recall.
Yeah.
It is very odd. I used to think everyone had it.
Yeah.
And then I thought I had H-Sam, H-Sam, which is, 300 people in the world have it, where they can remember everything. They remember what they wore and ate, in 1973 or something.
Yeah.
But then I realized I didn't, because I said, I think I have H-Sam just like Mary Lou, and I can remember Henner, because Mary Lou Henner has it.
She
So-
really.
So I thought if I
know.
can't remember Henner, I don't have it.
That's right. Well, when you read this, though, I mean, the detail and all
Yeah.
of that, it's almost like writing a novel, because you've got it all down, like,
Yeah.
these conversations and things. Like,
No, I would say to my wife, when do you think we first went to Paris?
Yeah.
She'd say, I don't know, 78, 81, and I could name the month and the year.
it's amazing. So why did you decide to write a book? A lot of celebrities do, some don't. Some don't want to go into all of that.
I was asked. They gave me a big advance. And then, no, but you sit on that advance and you kind of go, well, okay, I'm certainly motivated.
Right.
I've got a lot of stories,
Yeah.
but I might find this to be, invasive, a drag, something that I wish I hadn't done or committed.
Yeah.
And like all things, I thought, well, then I'll get out of it. I'll just give them the money back.
Oh.
Through the 4th SNL, Dick Ebersol, who was the Lorne Michaels that year, I wasn't having a good time. It was too much pressure. And I went in the middle of we had done 3 shows, taken a week off. Now we're back doing the 4th show. And I went to Dick Ebersol's office and said, Dick, I'd like to quit.
Wow.
And he went, wow.
Mhm.
And I said, but here's the thing. I haven't cashed any checks. Thinking that would be a big, he didn't care about that. So he was very smart. He said, well, if you leave now, you're going to look really bad, and we're going to look really bad.
Right. Yeah.
But if you still want to leave at Christmas, I'll let you out of your contract. Because he knew by Christmas I'd have figured out how to do it, you know. And I could see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, and it worked. It definitely
worked, yeah.
You know, worked out. So aren't you glad you stayed for that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been in Three Amigos. I wouldn't have made Inner Space.
Right.
Yeah.
Because Three Amigos was your first
movie.
Movie.
Yeah.
Wow. And where you met Steve? Did you know Steve before that?
Did not know Steve.
Or Chevy? Yeah.
I did not know Chevy. I
Yeah.
met them both in that movie. I actually went to Steve's house in July of '85.
Yeah.
After an evening with Lorne Michaels in New York, where he discussed this Western, and I went to pick up a script at Steve's because Steve wrote it with Lorne and Randy Newman.
Oh, wow.
And the first thing I said to Steve was, I looked around and there were Picassos on the wall, and I said, "How did you get this rich?" Because I've seen your work, you know. And right away oh, okay.
He is known as an art collector.
Yes, absolutely. He sure is.
Yeah. You know, it's again, I'm going to use the word chemistry that works, you know, but you've tried every aspect of show business and written it. And, you know, is there anything you feel like you failed at? You know, anything you've tried that didn't work for Martin Short?
No, I can't really think of, I've done things that, you know, you'd hope the response had been better, but I can't honestly say, and it's because I failed. But I do know that there are things that I've been asked to do, like directing and things like that, that I have kind of are not part of my bucket list because I don't kind of feel, you know, if I haven't done that, maybe there's a reason, you know.
Yeah, that's the one thing on your IMDb, whatever it is, IMDb rundown, that there's very little directing.
And now there's
under
none.
Martin
I don't
Short.
think there's anything.
There's one little Gilda Radner.
Oh yeah, for a that's
the
right.
documentary, and she's wonderful, by the way.
Yeah.
I've, you know, met her a couple times. One of the nicest people in the world. You know, everybody when you write about all of them in this book, you realize all the great people you've met in your career.
Oh my God, I've worked with some of the greatest comedy people, let alone great actors. You know.
Yeah. Well, you are also, as you say, a humble comedy legend yourself.
Yes, I am.
Which is so great. So you mentioned Irving Cohen. What does Nathan Thurm mean to you right now?
Nathan Thurm was the defensive lawyer who we put him in a 60 Minutes piece. It was written by Harry Shearer and Christopher Guest and Billy Crystal and myself, and I played the defensive lawyer, the guy who always represents the bad guy in the piece. And in this piece, he was the lawyer for Pingy Lee, and who was making false whoopee cushions and stuff like that. But he would be perfect because he's like Stephen Miller, or he's like any of these politicians that just look into the camera and lie. Kevin McCarthy, you know, they're brilliant in their absolute inability to have any moral compass.
Yeah. This is why you need a show all the time, so you can do these people that keep coming up. And I mean,
it's true.
It's endless material.
It is. It is. Well, I always thought if I did a thing with Glick and someone said, okay, now you have to do a 10-part series with Jiminy Glick, he would be a congressman. He would be,
perfect.
You know, he'd be from, you know, South Carolina, let's say.
Well, you should do that.
Yeah.
I want to be everywhere a new Jiminy Glick is being born here, because that is one of my favorites.
But I definitely, as a congressman, I think he'd make sense. Yeah.
Jerry Ross.
Mr. Glick goes to Washington.
Mr. Glick goes to Washington.
There you go.
Could be at least a special.
Yeah.
All right. Jerry Ross. And I mentioned Neil Sussman, which The Big Picture is a minor classic with Kevin Bacon, and you play this agent.
Written by Christopher and Michael McKean.
Yeah. Brilliant. That looked like a lot of fun to do.
Yes, I shot on 2 days on that one.
Yeah.
That's all.
But it's what people walk out talking about. They did on that movie, for sure. And Frank, of course, you recently reunited with Nancy Myers on that and did a little.
We did for a charity, you know, food kitchen, and we did. It was called Father of Bride 3-ish, because we did it a half an hour with Diane and Steve and Kimberly Williams,
Yeah.
George Newbern, and Robert De Niro.
It was amazing
Yeah.
too. You know, it was great to see. Now there's a new
Kieran Culkin.
a new Father of the Bride.
I know.
Coming out with Andy Garcia.
I know, that would be fun.
Yeah, yeah. But that was a classic, and so many that you've done. And you were also in Schmigadoon.
Yes.
I love that show. You know, I don't know if they're ever going to do more.
They're doing another season.
They are.
I will be showing up a couple more times.
The Leprechaun.
The Leprechaun. As Lorne Michael said to me when he phoned me about it, Marty, we want you to part in Schmigadoon. It's a stretch for you. You play a leprechaun.
Well, it's worth waiting for. It's a terrific show if you haven't seen that. And of course, Only Murders in the Building and everything else Martin Short does, always worth waiting for. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Peter.